When the Canucks miss the playoffs again.
When Jim Benning trades away all our picks.
When Goldalden is scratched for the third game in a row. C4 is there. With Sedin-like vision, Horvat's work ethic, and Petey's electric personality. Here comes the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Powered by Overtime Media.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, broadcasting virtually from the Vivid Seats studio, where you can use the code OVERTIME in the Vivid Seats mobile app to save yourself $100 on all ticket purchases, so long as you're the first-time customer. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined by Matt at MattLee_61, Adam at AdamFOC, and Anna at AForsyth03. The four of us are together virtually, which means craziness is about to ensue.
You nailed it, by the way. The names, the Twitter handles, everything. You're in mid-season form.
Definitely not the Canucks in Calgary, where they're being outshot 1,000,000-3.
Yeah,
It's
I believe those are the
preseason.
correct figures, yeah.
It's preseason.
Pedersen's not playing. Boeser's a split squad. Who cares?
It's true.
I care. There are many people on Twitter right now that care. Canucks Twitter is a very, very special place right now.
I think
We're gonna
they
get into
care,
this.
more about something else right now.
Well,
than-
no,
than
but like I
split
don't know
squad games.
if you're watching it. Like Canucks Twitter kind of came, together and everyone shook hands because it's been a real rough off season. But that, hey everyone, let's celebrate rah rah rah, took an evil turn.
I don't know. We're not obviously keeping up with what Canucks Twitter is saying at this point in time, but like Adam said, I'm not really worried about the very first preseason game, a split squad game in Calgary, what is relatively pretty much an AHL roster versus the Flames' A squad.
Yeah.
I mean, it renders the whole thing kind of pointless if they're going to do that, right? They probably should have organized that better.
Probably. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know what? Okay, I got to get this off my chest. I missed the Young Stars tournament this year.
Yeah, I did too.
Everyone did. I think it's something to look forward to. It's more exciting than what is happening right now. So,
And it brings hockey out. Sure, they're getting it in Victoria right now, but it brings it out to other areas of BC. And if they'd agreed to rotate the tournament, other areas of Alberta or California, wherever they wanted to move it around.
Yeah.
But
Speaking of Victoria, I'm just looking at a picture here of what appears to be the entire Lee family hanging out with a steamer.
That's right. I was in Victoria over the weekend with 3 R's. I highly doubt it. Oh, like for this episode? I can actually just on Sunday for the last day of training camp, the Lee family
Matt
saw
Lee,
Stan
good
Smeal
report.
on the street.
Hey, are we going to get a TDL
Like
segment
you actually
this,
want
this
the
episode?
Dad Lee? I only have the nuggets.
Well, for
And I have
any
some news
episode.
nuggets, which we'll get into later, about what
We
Stan
need it.
Smeal said about the Canucks.
Oh, yeah.
big
Yeah,
time.
I know. Inside that he gives on a regular basis.
I think the TDL segment would just, it would knock us over the edge.
Yeah.
Instead of being, the second highest ranked hockey podcast in Canada, we'd be the first with TDL.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, we got a lot to get to today, so why don't you tell everyone what we'll be talking about today?
Well, we weren't going to be talking about Brock Boeser, because why would we? Except Brock Boeser signed a contract. Yay. So we're going to talk a little bit about Brock, I gather.
Literally, by the way, can I just quickly interrupt and say, normally most of the time when we record something on, say, a Monday night like we are tonight, we miss things like preseason's happening, so we have no ability to offer up, game analysis. But in this case, having the Brock's contract signed, sealed, and delivered at 6 p.m. local time, essentially, we are now in a position where we're actually able to offer actual analysis right away, as opposed to having to, wait a full week.
yeah, this is still qualifying as breaking news. Really, I mean, we're not breaking it because you'll get this tomorrow, but for us, it is breaking news. So we're getting some fresh takes right now.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
right.
This is exciting. Crest the
Yeah.
wave.
Brock
So-
talk.
And of course, we'll be talking about training camp stories, everything that happened in Victoria, and maybe some of the storylines that we're looking forward to come this season.
Cool. What else are we going to talk about?
A little bit of smaller things, like, which players are really on that make or break kind of stage of their careers. And, we could all sort of name a few players, I think, on one hand about who there could be make or break seasons for. We'll talk a little bit about Quinn Hughes, of course. Is he the next Calder Trophy candidate coming from the Vancouver Canucks? And a real quick couple of ditties on maybe Vasily Podkolzin, who got sent to the VHL and is now playing for SKA St. Petersburg in the lower tier league. So a little bit of prospect talk as well.
Are we going to talk about Canucks Instagram? Everyone wants to talk about Canucks Instagram.
The Trampkin thing?
Yeah, that's huge news. Because, who else goes and drops into a Canucks live stream on a weekend to drop a heart?
Yeah. So, all but assuring, of course, Nikita Trampkin returning next season. So we'll get into all that coming up next here on the C4 podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
So, Matt, first of all, what the heck, made the decision that, we're going to go to Victoria for the last day of training camp? Why were you there, for the first day of training camp?
Yeah, we weren't obviously going to spend a full night in Victoria, just because I can only tolerate my family for small doses, of course.
Wow.
And, hey, you know what? They would pretty much say the same thing about me, let's be honest. So we decided to get up really early yesterday morning, Sunday, at 5 a.m. We got the 7 a.m. ferry over to Victoria from Tawasin. Came into Swartz Bay, got to Save on Foods Memorial Center in Victoria by about 9:30 a.m., just when they had sort of opened doors and players were starting to sign some autographs and stuff like that. So a lot to actually unpack from the whole training camp. And maybe if you guys like, I can indulge you a bit on who sort of stood out to me from a training camp standpoint.
It'd probably be a whole lot better for you to do it than us to do it from away.
Well, and then I'm sure that you guys had seen some sort of, things that were said on Canucks Twitter about who sort of stood out. So I'm not going to, overstay my analysis. And again, I don't really have analysis in general. But I will say this. Adam Gaudette stood out to me as one of the stars of training camp on Sunday. He looks a little bit bigger. His board work, in terms of battling for loose pucks along the boards, has improved immensely. I think from just looking at it in person that it would be very difficult for the Vancouver Canucks to make the decision, though it's an easy one, to send Adam Gaudette to Utica this season.
Do you think Gaudette's the kind of guy who's proven all he can at the AHL level?
No, I think Adam Gaudette does have some room to grow at the AHL level, and like I said, he is the easy first candidate to send to Utica because of the fact that he's on what is effectively a two-way contract and doesn't require waivers. But he just looks so much better than the likes of Louis Eriksson, than the likes of Nikolai Goldobin, for instance. There were at least 4 or 5 forwards that I thought Adam Gaudette outplayed enough that he should be on this team come opening night.
Interesting.
Louis Eriksson didn't really stand out. Louis Eriksson looked like a guy who's done his 12th training camp, and it was kind of old hat to me.
No, so it didn't look like he's going to have a breakout year based on your 1 day's worth
Did
of...
we really think that was going to happen anyway?
The reclamation year is not coming this year, I think. And honestly, I'm not saying he's Utica bound, but I would rather have Louis Eriksson in Utica than Adam Gaudette.
Well, we'll talk about that too. We'll talk about players who might be going down when we get to the better contract stuff too.
So, a couple funny stories though. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever lined up to get autographs from Vancouver Canucks players at an event or at a practice or after a game or anything?
Yeah, I done it. My friend took me to a season ticket holder event one time, and then there was a preseason game where I met Frankie Corrado and couldn't breathe.
Oh God, no one cares about that. But so you'll simply bypass that. At these events, did you have a lot of kids there?
I mean, yeah, obviously.
I mean, so this is we're getting off track, but we can get a little off track here at the start. But these are unique stories. I don't know about you guys. There were a lot of kids at the Save on Foods Memorial Center, and, rightfully so. It was a relatively free event, and kids could come in and try and get their autographs and stuff like that. There were so many friggin' kids who were just screaming at players, "Can I have your stick? Can I have your stick?" I don't know about you. It just seemed a little entitled to me from kids that are just "Oh, can I have your stick? Can I get your stick?" Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I hate that.
Also, I mean,
I'm
what
not a big
if
fan
you're
of kids, so.
if you're 10 years old, would you not just try to get a stick from a player?
Is it just kids shooting their shot? You can't get it if you don't ask?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. I was never like that as a kid, though. I never said to players like, "Can I have your stick?"
All things that happen at training camps and hockey games, that is probably like at the absolute bottom of the things that would get me riled up.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It just like these are professional players. Like they're not obligated to give sticks, and you do see them give sticks away. But if I'm a player, I'm giving it to the kid that didn't ask for the stick. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
I'm just not going to give it to some entitled kid who thinks that he or she can just get a stick. I don't know. I thought it was weird. I will point out, though, on the positive side of things, Elias Pettersson, he is like borderlining on Pavel Bure rockstar treatment in Vancouver right now. Like the hype train is so real for Elias Pettersson. There were these kids by the tunnel that see Pettersson from like 30 feet out, right by the door, and they're like, Petey! And he comes out and he's literally signing autographs for about a full hour. I kid you not, that Pettersson was out there. And it was so funny. There were kids there that are getting things signed by Brogan Rafferty, and the kids go up to Rafferty after, and he goes, "Can you get Elias Pettersson to come over here after he's done over there?" And there's poor Brogan Rafferty, like, signing some kid's shirt, and he's like, "Oh, I'll try."
Rafferty, by the way, I've heard has impressed great.
He has impressed at camp, by the way. Like, I thought Rafferty and Josh Tevez both looked pretty good on a pairing together, and I think, when we'll get into this as well, I think they're more earlier call-ups than Oli Juolevi at this point.
Interesting, okay.
Juolevi did look like a guy who had just come off of knee surgery and isn't quite up to 100% condition. And I think coaches were sympathetic to that. Like, I saw them talking to Juolevi a lot, and Juolevi's like keeled over a lot after line rushes and stuff like that. So I don't think the conditioning is quite there on Juolevi, but
right,
anyway.
But there's no rush. I think that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
The other funny story that I'll also bring up is the family and I, my family, not the family, we were sitting right next to Kirk McLean, who's just there minding his own business. Mm-hmm. And in our family, and you guys can sort of weigh in on this first, in our family, there's this debate. If a player beats a goaltender but hits the post, was the goalie beaten? Or is the post considered part of the goalie's equipment, so to speak? Like, it's more of a philosophical question. Do you know what I mean? You know how, like, commentators go, like, he beats Luongo, but not the post. Was the goalie technically beaten?
I don't like that. Like, I've always been an advocate against that kind of language in football as well. Just, like, the goalie's job is to block it from going into the net. So if they're getting it to hit the post, then they've done their job.
But what if it hits the post and goes in? You know, you gotta
go. It's a higher risk.
Yeah,
but
going existential here.
So think of it this way, though. You beat the goaltender who's well out of position, lost his crease, but because you beat the goaltender in such a position that goaltender is in, and the puck misses the net completely, if we consider that beating the goaltender, even though you had no hope in heck of getting a goal, how would that be any different than if it hit the post and stayed out? Like,
that's what I say. That's what I mean, that's the argument I make.
Yeah, beating the goaltender would have to be applicable regardless of what would be the result, even if there was no hope that puck was ever going to go in the net. So in my mind, it's good positioning, as Luongo would be apt to say back in the day. So yeah, hits the post, stays out, you didn't beat the goaltender.
I agree. And that has been a debate that has raged on internally in the Lee family for many a year. And the long story short, to bring it back to Kirk McLean, a cousin of mine goes up to Kirk McLean and asks him to settle this debate once and for all. And Kirk McLean says that the post is effectively a part of a goaltender's equipment, and therefore he was not beaten.
Of course, the goalie's going to say
that.
Yeah,
and that's what the defense of D-Dad Lee was. And I regret it not asking Stan Smeal from a player's perspective as well. But that was the other funny story.
Why doesn't TDL go and hang out with Bo for a few minutes and ask him a question?
So, by the way, on that topic, we asked D-Dad Lee if he had mentioned to Bo that we were coming. And we were like, we're not leaving Victoria until we get a family photo with Bo Horvat, the future captain of the Vancouver Canucks. And sure enough, we did not get any of that. So we're going to have to postpone the Bo Horvat and family portrait for another day.
You should have gone up to, Rafferty and say, hey, can you get Bo to come over? We got to get a family picture with him.
Yeah, no kidding. Couple smaller things. We actually ran into Stan Smeel on the street in Victoria after the day was over, and a couple, interesting things that I'll mention is that Stan Smeel, obviously as director of player development, is super excited about this season. But he said they're really excited about the season in particular, just because of the nucleus of young players that they've now got assorted. He mentioned that he obviously didn't know much about JT Miller from a professional scouting perspective, but there was a play in training camp where JT Miller ripped into Nikolai Goldobin for messing up something during one of the line rushes. They were paired together. And he said Miller now strikes him as a guy who is going to hold those younger players to account and to be better and drive them to be better. And that's something that they've been lacking in terms of a team culture and compete perspective for the last couple years. So I think the team is definitely a lot higher on JT Miller than, the fans would be, because of course it cost a first round pick to acquire JT Miller. But there is something to be said about the leadership and competitive nature of JT Miller and what he brings to the team. The other thing that I want to mention is he mentioned that the Canucks got screwed in 2011.
So how?
In what sense?
We all know they did.
Well, in terms of the officiating, yes.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I thought that was interesting coming from, a player of Stan Smeel's, stature. Of course, he was, right there in the front office with Mike Gillis during that 2011 run. And of course, management had voiced their displeasure with the officiating and said that they were disappointed by it. But it was just interesting that he actually used the words that we got screwed in 2011. And I think that was kind of something to take away. And of course, no one here is going to let 2011 go. But I thought that was kind of interesting.
Did you bring that up, or did he?
I think the original question was which of the Stanley Cup Finals runs was Stan Smeel most fond of. And of course, Smeel had sort of been playing a part in all three of them. As a player in 1982, he was on the bench for 1994, and he was in the front office for 2011. So he, of course, mentioned 82 as a player. That stands out, but he said 2011, they were just gutted and they felt screwed by the officiating.
Well, you look at 82, they were going up against the dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
In 94, they weren't even supposed to make it out of the first round.
Yeah.
Right? 2011 was as it was written in stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one more thing that we had brought up with Stan Smeel.
The most important thing.
It is the most important thing. Is how did you butcher the Vasily Podkolzin pick so badly during the draft? Do you guys remember that?
That was bad.
He must have been real happy for the question, I'm sure.
I know. I was like, I have to ask you this, Stan. This is my question asking him. But
typical media.
If you,
always
I
negative.
know. If you remember correctly, he pronounced it. What was it, Vasilias Podslovan or something?
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
it gets me every time I hear it.
Yeah, I need to go back, but I'm pretty sure it was along those lines of how he called it. And I asked Stan, how did that pronunciation sort of thing happen? And he says that he was effectively talking to one of the scouts for the longest time, he was sort of out of it. And Jim goes up to him on 10 minutes before the pick, and he goes, "You're making the pick." And Stan's like, "Oh, what? What? I didn't know it was making the pick." He turns over to John Weisbrot and goes, "How do I say this name?" Of course, it's the Russian kid that they're going to end up taking. And he turns to John. He's like, "Is this how you pronounce it?" "I think that's how you pronounce it." So he goes up, and I think he said that it was John Weisbrot that gave him that direction of how to pronounce it. And he just completely and utterly butchers the line. And I think it makes sense, because if you go back and watch the pick, he just looked like a guy who was completely unprepared. I think he had the card in front of him as well, and he still sort of butchered. Yeah. So it was a funny story, and I think maybe something that we'll look back on when Vasily Podkolzin comes over to Vancouver.
Yeah, because it's not that hard a name to pronounce. There's some rough Russian names out there, but that's
I could have pursued it even more.
No,
Stan, you're director of player development. You should know how to pronounce Vasily Podkolzin's name, because he was likely in your team's wheelhouse in terms of who you were targeting. But no, I had to stop there, because you don't give a guy who's got his number in the rafters a hard time.
Yeah. When's Stan joining C4?
I pushed him for the shout out, but he wasn't quite having it.
Well, not after you asked him about
the
pronunciation.
I know. He didn't look at me the right way after. And of course, we got a family photo, which we'll share in Gate 16 as well.
Sweet.
How about we take a break, and we'll get to the big story of the day, and it's, of course, the Brock Boeser contract.
He liked to say the F word.
Who gonna get the
here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
So, news had broken today, prior to the actual breaking of news, that the Vancouver Canucks hadn't had much communication with the Brock Boeser camp. So what the heck changed? Because our boy Brock has signed a 3-year bridge deal and is now, well, I guess maybe not yet in training camp. He might be nearby, but I would imagine tomorrow he's on the ice wearing a Canucks jersey.
Apparently he'll be back Wednesday. Is what
Wednesday?
I think Murph tweeted Wednesday.
See, it broke like minutes before I was able to fire up the podcast machine here so we could actually record. So all I saw was the frantic conversation in Gate 16 that Brock had signed, and everyone going huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. I don't even actually know the value. I just knew it was a 3-year deal.
3 years at $5.875 per. The important figure of that, other than the term, I guess, is the last year he's getting paid $7.5 million, which means... QOs. Yes, exactly. So it'll still be an RFA when the deal is over, which is great news for the Canucks, holding his rights and everything. But to QO a player who makes over $1 million, you have to offer them 100% of their last year that they got paid, which means Boeser will be making at least 7.5 on his next deal per year. So you could argue, a longer term deal maybe would be able to keep the cost down. 3 years from now, who knows how many goals Boeser is putting up, especially playing alongside a guy like Pettersson. So he could probably likely will end up making way more than 7.5 when you could have got him for maybe 7.5 for the next 7 years, So the Canucks were a little hamstrung or had their hands tied a little bit with all their cap issues. They're right now about $890,000 over the cap.
Yeah, they're one Roussel over.
That's with Roussel on IR, actually.
Oh, so that is?
It is, yeah. So they are over the cap right now, even with Roussel on IR. So something has to give still, but they do have Boeser ready to go soon. So that's the best news any Canucks fan could hope for.
Yep.
So, I know we'll get into the Marner contract at some point in time, but how much did that domino falling trigger this sudden push of RFAs? Or was it just a matter of that preseason hockey was starting and teams and players finally decided they needed to get work done?
Well, I mean, I remember we had sort of discussed this on a previous episode not too long ago, that we had suspected that Mitch Marner was that big domino that had to fall going into the training camp. And when it did, we did start to see that little trickle down of players getting done. Travis Konechny got signed by the Philadelphia Flyers just before Brock Boeser did today. And of course, there are still some other big dominoes that have yet to fall. Patrick Laine, Braden Point, Mikko Rantanen. Those are some big ticket players that still are unsigned. However, now that you're seeing Brock Boeser brought off the market on a bridge deal, maybe when we start to see what Mikko Rantanen might be worth on a bridge deal as well. I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if at this point next week, all the big ticket players, like the ones I mentioned, Braden Point, Rantanen, and Laine, and Kyle Connor, I would not be surprised if every single one of them has a contract.
Do you think there'll be bridge deals? Because I do think Boeser signing this deal now is good for the Canucks because it gets them ahead of whatever the market might be. 5.875 is a great figure for a player of Boeser's caliber. When you have guys like Point and Laine, he might be signing bridge deals too. They could be worth well more than 6 or 7 on a bridge deal.
I mean, it depends on what the player wants, of course. Like Rantanen and Point, like they could all easily command 7-8 year contracts if they really wanted to. I'm not sure what they're sort of looking for, but if they want, if Mikko Rantanen wants an 8-year deal worth $9-10 million, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it either.
Yeah, neither. I think the bridge deals might be more likely, but then they're going to be bigger than Brock Boeser. Would the clubs really want to be? Would they be willing to pay out big bridge deals? It's kind of like the reason we're able to keep the costs down is we kept the term low. So
Chris, for maybe for you, because you're the all things knower of the CBA and stuff like that, how much of this has to do with, like, you know, CBA's possibly changing by the time Brock Boeser's contract expires?
Well, the fact that the CBA does expire in, was it 3 years,
Yeah.
you know, does open up quite a bit. Now, if you're a player who was signing over that transition, like I'll use the Marner as an example, there's a reason why Marner is being paid in signing bonuses. Now, Boeser, his contract isn't so signing bonus heavy because there isn't that requirement for money up front that could potentially be lost should there be a labor stoppage, a lockout, what have you. I think we'll see a transition with how the league handles its money, but in the same regard, the players hate escrow. I kind of wonder if maybe Brock Boeser is rolling the dice on that fact, thinking that, hey, I'll be able to take home more of my money in a new contract that isn't tied up by a transition into a new CBA. And it should be noted, the players came out to say that today that they're not using their out clause this season, so labor peace for a couple more seasons.
Right, a couple more seasons, of course. And getting back to Brock Boeser from a playing perspective, how much, if any, impact is there on the fact that Brock Boeser missed all of training camp and is now going to have to get into preseason and sort of catch up to speed? Anna, do you think that there's any sort of impact from having missed the entire training camp, or is that an overblown sort of storyline, if you will?
I'm sure I'm sure training camp is helpful, but he's not a player fighting for his job. He's not a player that's looking to find some chemistry with new teammates or even line mates. If there's anyone that can cope with missing that, I'll bet my bottom dollar that Brock's done his off-season work, so I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Chris, any sort of follow-up thoughts on that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not entirely concerned that he missed training camp. I trust in the fact that Brock Boeser has, kept himself in shape, that he is not just missing goals that were set at the conclusion of last year. But to, look at another team who has a player who's, getting back in the swing of things, Edmonton, is deciding that, hey, we have a player that doesn't even need to play this preseason because we don't want to hurt him. Whereas Brock, we know will actually get some ice time. So,
are we talking about
concern?
Who are we talking about from Edmonton?
What's his name?
McDavid.
Broke his leg. McDavid. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
McDavid is.
So he's not playing all of preseason because of the fact he's still recovering from the broken leg, or is it they don't want to take chances?
Don't want to take chances, right?
Well,
but
he is just he's a kind of important player, but
that's the thing is like they trust in the fact that his training program,
and recovery,
his conditioning, his recovery, like that is there's no need to rush back, even though he was on the ice for training camp.
Yeah.
So I'm not too concerned. Plus, he played in the Beauty League, and it's. Whereas a JV-18 showed up with his 80s style hockey background, Brock Boeser is playing in the modern era where you don't actually stop playing hockey over the course of the off season.
Right. One more quick sort of anecdote, if you will. The big loser out of this, Reid Boucher, who was lining up next to Elias Pettersson throughout training camp, by the way, did not stand out for any right reason during training camp from what I had seen.
Yeah, he's a tough one, eh? Like, he seems to be the number one person any prospect brings up as, the talent in Utica, and yet he's just never quite put it together.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about Reid Boucher, like, all day, I guess, but we're pretty much seeing everything that we're ever going to get out of Reid Boucher, which is he is, at best, a 13th forward.
Can I say one more thing about the Boeser contract itself?
Yeah.
So the deal, 3 years, obviously. When the deal is over, as it stands, Thomas Strands, welcome back, tweeted this out. The Canucks are only committed to Horvat, Miller, Ferland, and Myers for that upcoming season. Obviously, guys like Demko and Pettersson and Hughes have their deals expiring before that, so you can count them in too. But there's going to be a lot of flexibility that the Canucks can be able to use come that time. So
Pettersson will...
Well, Pettersson, yeah. I mean, Pettersson and Boeser... and Demko, you can probably, I don't know, what, 25 million for all three of them together, something like that. So who knows what it all end up being. But I'm just saying the guys like Eriksson and Beagle and those anchors will be off the hook. Or will be off the books, rather.
Yeah, I'll use Toronto as an example where they have 4 players consuming, was it 50% of their cap right now?
Yeah, 4 players making 40 million total.
Yeah, so they have that flexibility through a combination of that complete rebuild that they were able to swing in a season and the fact they got 14 million on LTIR, which is another story. You're right, and with what Drance has said, yeah, Canucks are actually, dare I say it, in a pretty decent spot, save for the 2 years it'll take to get there where Jim Benning can start to sign contracts.
Speaking of Benning, was this a coup, if you will, from Jet Black Jim, or was this just a fair bridge deal for both sides in your guys' mind? Adam, we'll start with you because you've always been a big proponent of Jim Benning's.
To me, this is a good deal given the circumstances. So they could have done better had they not signed guys like Eriksson to, these anchor contracts. And not been kind of hamstrung by the cap situation. But given the situation, it's a tidy piece of work by Benning.
But don't you think as well that because of those anchor contracts, it allowed them to sort of, not strong arm, but like get Boeser to be just a little bit more flexible on the bridge deal? You might be able to say that.
You might. I mean, yeah, I think it's a win given the situation.
Chris, Anna, any leftover thoughts on like the Jet Black Jim? Was it Jet Black Jim or was it Trader Jim that we saw?
Oh, I hate to call anything he does positive, but I mean, the number works. The fact that the Vancouver Canucks can actually make the cap fit. My concern on the bridge is the whole it's going to cost you Chief in 3 years if he continues to play really well.
I was waiting for you to drop that line, actually.
Right, but I mean, I have to also concede that earlier point that the Vancouver Canucks will theoretically have a whole lot of room to maneuver. I mean, they could potentially funnel all of Louis Eriksson into Brock Boeser in 3 years' time, and things would still be okay.
Yeah, but you guys are also not accounting for the fact that we're going to bring back Eric Goodbranson when he's a free agent on a 7-year, $80 million contract. So,
see, that's the nightmare fuel that I needed. Thank you.
You know what? I said I would be positive this year, so I have belief that we will be okay when it comes down to it and the money comes off the books, and we will not spend it in unwise places.
So, you know what? Actually, just to wrap that up, and then sorry, Anna, to go there. You know how big of an impact the $6 million of Louis has on this sort of collective mentality of the Canucks fan base? I mean, we look at, I'll use like the Tyler Myers deal. It actually might be a decent deal. The fact, though, is that number matches the horror show that is, Louis Eriksson. The fact that we've got 5.25 tied up in JT Miller could be actually a decent, deal ultimately in a trade, and yet it's the $6 million Louis Eriksson. So I think that's where people look at the Brock Boeser deal, and it's not that they're saying Brock isn't a good player. I think everyone to a person says he's well worth the money, but the worry is that we'll see other Louis Eriksson deals that'll continue to consume what space is left when we already know that Petey's going to get himself paid. Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, kind of on that point, though I do agree with Adam that given the context, it was a good deal, but it's hard to give the Canucks too much credit when it's, it's not some situation they've stepped into. The other deals were made by them, were made by this front office here. So, yeah, it's a mess of their own making. So, just because they made some better deals in the last couple months, doesn't necessarily excuse the rest of it.
Okay. And any more leftover thoughts on Brock, or should we take a break and we will get into half full, half empty?
Let's take ourselves a short break.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on it.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy. Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time, and yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So, this is the most optimistic time of year, or so Matt says in our rundown, because everyone thinks they've got a shot to make the postseason. Well, Matt, seeing as you are the most positive one on the podcast this year, why don't you kick us off and tell us, do the new additions get this team over the hump?
Adam's leg is contorting with my leg. We are wrapped up like a pretzel at the moment. Yeah, you know what? I am positive, and I know it's again September when hope springs the most eternal, of course, but you do look at the additions, and I don't think anyone here is disagreeing that the team did get better over the offseason. JT Miller, Tyler Myers, a full year out of Quinn Hughes, the continued development out of guys like Troy Stetcher, Brock Boeser, Elias Pettersson, Bo Horvat taking on the captaincy. There's no doubt that morale, if you will, is at least at an all-time high within the organization, and that the team has gotten better. That said, I will admit that it is very hard to see the Canucks, usurping a team that either did make the playoffs or had just narrowly missed the playoffs. And it will be a dogfight, maybe until the last game of the year in terms of making the playoffs. But I do think we can all safely say that the Canucks have not been this close to the playoffs for quite some time. It cost a first-round pick, of course, to get JT Miller, but, I am sort of in the, not like team playoff sort of standpoint, but it's like it is definitely a feasible, realistic possibility that the Canucks can make the playoffs.
I'd agree with that. I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility. I don't know, maybe 50-50, maybe a little less, whatever odds you want to put on it. Yeah, they're definitely a better team. They're going to be more fun to watch. It won't be as painful to watch. They have more offensive weapons. It's just, like Matt said, is it going to be good enough to push another team out of the playoffs? Obviously, injuries can change any of this, so we'll see. But, at this point, there's optimism. It's just not... it's not guaranteed.
Curious for your guys' thoughts. We'll start with Anna.
Yeah, I think there's no argument that this team got better, but I think we've had quite a few disappointing off seasons. So it might be just that we got better rather than getting worse. So I don't know if the difference is substantial enough. In order to make the playoffs, I guess. Yeah, it'll be a lot dependent on how they survive injury-wise. I mean, we still have some aging defensemen there that might be the difference. So, and it will really depend if Quinn continues the development he's shown, which I'm pretty sure he will. But, yeah, I think our chances are a lot better. But whether they completely make the difference, I don't know.
Chris?
Well, it comes down to me as being quite simple. Do the Vancouver Canucks have two scoring lines?
Yes.
Yes.
See, I'm not as sold that they do. We know they have one, and I think they have the potential for a second, but I think that's the question mark there. And that's not a knock against, the Horvat line, which I think will be a really good line. But if that line can't produce points to the pace that, the PD Boeser line will be able to produce, that I think is where the difference maker is. If we have a scoring line, we have two shutdown lines, 2A, 2B, or 3A, 3B, however we look at it. Now the Vancouver Canucks are still sort of maybe below the cutoff.
Nah, you know what? I'll actually disagree, and maybe this is again me going back to being positive, but I think it's pretty clear that Michael Ferland is going to get every opportunity to succeed on a line with Pettersson and Boeser to start the year on that first line. Correct?
It's, for all intents, that's what it appears to be. Again, the first line, No.
And I'll get to that in a second, but Ferland has a demonstrated ability to play well with superstars. We saw it in Calgary with Johnny Gaudreau, and we saw it with Carolina just last year with Sebastian Aho. I don't think that there's any doubt that Ferland can play that quote-unquote bumper role that we've seen get thrown around a little bit this year. And then you look at that second line, and this is where I think the acquisition of JT Miller actually becomes quite important, is that Miller is, for all intents and purposes, a proven second line player at the very least, who can also just so happen play center if needed. I think that Miller brings a versatility and a stability as a line mate for Bo Horvat that Bo Horvat has not seen before. And so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Miller can be a 25-goal, 50-point guy with Brock Boeser on a second line. And he's played hard matchups before. We have seen that JT Miller can play against the top players and do pretty well doing it. So I think that the acquisition of JT Miller does actually give the Canucks two very tangible scoring lines that can make it problematic for opposing defenses to shut down every single night.
Well
said, man.
If that answers that question, then that's where success is found. I'd like to see the proof that needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. Right? And, this is on paper, of course, and we need to see it happen in the season. But I do think that, again, optimism reigns supreme in September. I do think that there is every bit of possibility that the Canucks do have two very viable scoring lines, and that does have what you would call the trickle-down effect on the third and fourth lines. Like, there are better players that were used to playing on the second line that are now getting pushed down on the third line. Like Sven Baertschi all of a sudden could now be a third-line player as opposed to being asked to play a top-six role, and that also makes an impact because he's no longer facing tough defensive matchups that he had been in a top-six role.
Well, the third and fourth line, I don't look at those two lines as needing to produce. Hey, we score a few goals here and there.
But I think
nice to have. And if that's what, Baertschi needs is the, Cody Hodgson treatment where you get the selective opportunities, so be it, right? But I would presume we're going to be looking at Miller, Horvat, Pearson.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Like, Miller can play both the left and the right side, and I think Pearson's a left winger, so you could easily see a Pearson, Horvat, Miller line on opening night.
See, to me, that's a real good blue-collar line that can trend to white. But if all we see is that as a good, hardworking blue-collar line, that's the concern, is that blue-collar style of play doesn't always generate the points, especially the points that are necessary out west here in the Pacific.
Maybe it's not an elite line for sure, but I do think that Horvat has shown he can prove at a borderline first line level. Mm-hmm. Miller has proven that as well. And Pearson, who knows with Pearson? He's still a question mark, I think. But those are they're blue collar, they work hard, and they might be strong defensively. But I don't see how those guys don't both get 20 goals each, right? And to me, that's more than fine secondary scoring. So.
Yeah, and it's the proof in the pudding. I have been burned probably during the real good era far too much, and in the early Travis Green era where we've seen, how many jag lines as we can get. I'm not trying to suggest any one of those two or three qualifies as a jag. It's just the style of play, the systems that get put into place. If that line is the blue-collar line that doesn't generate those points, then that third line just needs to be the 2B. That's where I don't feel the Vancouver Canucks have the depth to have a 2B.
I would agree with that. I'm just going to skew a little more positive than my previous comment and say the elite teams, they don't have the shutdown lines that other teams do because they have depth and scoring depth the way through the lineup. And I do think Canucks are trying to trend towards that. I know they want Brandon Sutter to play less of a shutdown role this year. So I think, as Matt said, with the more skilled players getting pushed down the lineup a little more, that they are trending towards that, so that second line can be that productive and less of a blue-collar line, as you suggested. I
do agree with that. It may be, a year or two down the road when guys like Koland or Podkolzin are making their way into the league, they can kind of trend towards that more. But right now there are too many, as you would say, jags, Chris, in that bottom six to really provide that amplified secondary scoring.
Well, no, and therein lies the problem, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the second line is totally fine, but after that, there's just not enough people who can put pucks in the net.
Yeah, and that is the point I was just trying to make, is that second line's a good second line, but if they're not trending towards being at high 2, that 1B, the problem is when we go down, we have a definitive third at best. And that's not a third that's going to trend up. But hey, Lou Eriksson has a breakout season. Paired with Brandon Sutter, and the two become, like, legendary. Right? That's how it works?
Yeah. I like I said this off the top of the show, I am not fully convinced that Louis Eriksson is on the roster this season.
We see this in Gate 16 so often. It's like, oh yeah, no, he's either going to be in Utica, or he's going to be this, or he's going to be that. I don't know. Like, ultimately it would be the Gagne treatment. Hey, Louis, which team do you want to go to? We'll loan you out. But then I wonder if there are that many teams that would be as keen on, Louis taking our roster spot. I'm sure there are some.
And that's why I've said Utica. But, we could rehash the Louis Eriksson where he will play in 2019 debate all day long.
No, I know. I'm not sold. It's gonna. I know. Truly not sold. I think he's press box fodder.
Yeah. Let's move along just a little bit quicker here and moving down the line. A question for you, Anna. Who is facing the biggest make or break season with the Vancouver Canucks? Nikolai Goldobin or Jake Virtanen?
I mean, I would say Goldobin just because he has the greater potential to succeed, right? He has more in the line in that way because Jake is never going to be the same elite sort of skill level that Goldobin is capable of, that he hasn't quite reached yet. I think Jake has a lot to prove, and he's not started off on the best foot at all. But yeah, there's definitely that higher upside with Goldie, so
yep.
Yeah, he either makes it or he doesn't.
Just, Chris, to be devil's advocate, I mean, you could argue for Jake Virtanen just simply because, going back to the Saturday debacle of him not, achieving those goals that he was supposed to achieve over the offseason and playing in the third group, and you mentioned, Twitter lost their minds over it. Would you not make the argument that it could also be a make-or-break year for Jake?
Well, it's definitely a make-or-break year for Jake, although I was going to suggest that the happiest person, and I use that sarcastically, was Nikolai Goldobin to see, Jake show up 80s style, right? Like, Nikolai Goldobin is a curious case for me, because it was apparent last year that either Travis Green didn't trust in his ability to play or didn't feel that he fit within the system. And then to see the Vancouver Canucks qualify him and, wait until near end to sign, though I get that, Brock had something to do with that. You then have JV18, who, for all intents and purposes, was told at the offseason that he needed to, pull those pants up. And little did the team understand that Jake interpreted that, I need to get myself a new pair. Well, these ones are a little tight anyway. It's make or break. Definitely make or break.
Okay. Let's, again, continue to move a little fast here, but a lot of excitement, of course, about Quinn Hughes. By the way, at training camp on Sunday, a kid asks him, hey, Quinn, who's better, Luke or Jack? What kind of question is that? I'm giving kids a hard time, but what kind of kid asks Quinn Hughes who's better, Luke or Jack Hughes?
More importantly, what did he answer?
Yeah,
better,
I'm curious.
But better between the two of them. He's saying Quinn's better than than the other two.
Yeah, the trick answer was that it's Quinn is better than all two of them combined. But this kid kept incessantly asking Quinn Hughes, and he did his best to ignore it. So eventually he just sort of says in sort of an exasperated tone, I don't know. Which I guess is the best fence-sitting answer that you can give if you're Quinn Hughes, but I just wanted to take that, like, Adam, I know you're a teacher, but like I did not want to see that kid continue speaking any further.
I can't believe Quinn Hughes copped out on the answer. I want to legitimately know. I think the thousands and thousands of C4 listeners want to legitimately know.
Doesn't matter. They're both going to be Canucks in some point.
You're the one who went to Stan Smith and said, how did you butcher this Russian kid's name on the main stage?
I have no filter. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I did get Quinn Hughes' autograph, though, by the way.
Apparently this kid that you're pissed off has no filter either. It's a little Matt Lee in the making.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, how out of control is the hype train, Adam, on Quinn Hughes?
Out of control? Not as out of control as it was when he started last year. I feel like it's been pretty muted on Hughes. I mean, all I can really say, especially now that Boeser signed, is the thing that's got me most jazzed for the season is just seeing Hughes, Boeser, and Pettersson play again. Forget everything else that happened this offseason. I just want to see those three on the ice again because they were so fun. So yeah, there's some hype, but is it out of control? I don't know. I think it's pretty fair given what we saw last year.
Chris, any thoughts on Quinn Hughes?
I like the kid. I thought he looked well. But as to, what time he gets, I seriously think he's our third pairing, seventh defenseman, at least in the early going.
What? No way.
Wait, hang on. Did you just say Quinn? Sorry, I was showing Adam the video of Quinn Hughes signing my shirt, so I was a little distracted.
Why did he take
But did
a
you
picture
just?
of that?
I don't know.
That's beside the point.
It needed proof.
Stop distracting us from what Chris
So
said.
did Chris just say Quinn is going to start as the 7th or 8th defenseman?
I said third pairing, possibly the 7th to start the season.
Okay, who are the 6 ahead of him?
Okay, well, the first three we already know, correct? I don't have to go about
Edler, Stetcher, and Tanev? Okay,
and
fine.
Myers.
And Myers, yeah. So to start the season,
So then I have Stetcher.
That's 4.
So that leaves us Ben
Hughes.
Ben Hughes and Biega. I don't.
Well, he's not getting benched for Biega. I think the problem is not that you said bottom pairing / 7th. It's not that you said he'll start as a bottom pairing. It's that you suggested even that he'd be a 7th or 8th.
He might get muted minutes at the beginning and play on all the power plays and stuff like that. But I think he's.
I think he'll rotate in and out. He may not end there, but I honestly don't believe they're just going to throw him in, play the hell out of the kid, without the opportunity to bring him in and out. This is not unheard of that a kid is getting protected minutes.
They didn't do that with Pettersson or Boeser.
Well, they did healthy scratch Boeser at the start of the year, remember?
Yeah, for one game.
2 games.
2 games.
With, to be honest, different situations. The Vancouver Canucks had very few bright lights.
That's true.
This is true. Sea of darkness.
Yeah.
Just from a pure marketing perspective, they couldn't afford that. But now, the Boeser train, the Pettersson train are well down the tracks. People are on board and they are hyped. I think people are equally hyped about Hughes, but there isn't this pressing need that we got to get this kid in and we need him to succeed because, heaven
but
forbid
they do
he
need
doesn't.
him to succeed.
Yeah.
They
do, but I think
on ice and off ice.
Correct.
I
So
totally
that's
agree.
where I think they're more guarded.
Yes.
We
know the pressure that the Canucks blue line is under and what a big job it is, to put it mildly. So, yeah, I think they'll be aware of not wearing him out.
Should we start a new list for the 2019-20 season?
Because we don't do anything with the old list.
Yeah,
It's just a
okay.
thing.
I pledged. I'll put it on the list that I will maintain the list.
So that's the first item on the list that got broken.
I will start a new list this season. New clean slate again. September. Hope reigns eternal. That I will maintain this list.
Okay, so the you do realize the moment he gets scratched for one game, I'm right.
Okay, yes. I will say this, and you can put this on the list for the first part of the season. I'm willing to say Quinn Hughes will not be a healthy scratch once this season.
Really? I think he might be once, but I think I'd say he easily plays more games than Alex Biega.
Okay, that's not what I said, though. I said bottom pairing, potential 7th in the early going. Now, in the early going, he's going to have a protected amount of ice time. That's clear as day. If they don't protect him, that means he has to be playing lights out hockey. And even then, as good as the kid would be, I wouldn't want him to be carrying that load, especially with the players you have above. So I believe they're going to be more guarded with this, especially considering I'll use Levy. I mean, Levy was the Canucks blue line savior, and unfortunately it did not work out. So the Vancouver Canucks don't want there to be any form of Levy comparison or Levy, development curve to Quinn Hughes.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm putting it on the list already that I said that he won't be a healthy scratch once this year.
Okay.
Chris, as we wrap things up here on the C4 podcast, how about you tell people where they can find us?
You already found us. That's a trick question, Matt. But if you are listening to us, wherever it happens to be that you are, our hope is that you do subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast app. Because again, we're pretty much on every single platform there is known to man. If you don't subscribe, well, hit that button. It'd do us a significant solid. That said, you can also find us online at the C4 Podcast. That Twitter account has a whole lot more, sass, because it's the lovely Anna Forsyth that manages it now. It used to be me, and my old man jokes are lost on pretty much all of you youngsters these days.
Yeah, it's awful.
I'm so sorry about that. I will do better next time. And then we're on Facebook, facebook.com/the C4 Podcast. But I think the best place to be, by far, is in Discord. And the easiest way to get to our Discord is go to bit.ly/C4Discord, C4 Discord, all caps. Join the conversation with us in Gate 16, which is currently named Wait 16, which doesn't seem to be as appropriate anymore. What do we need to name Wait 16
Well, when
to?
we waited
No, keep it at Wait 16.
I thought we were waiting for Brock.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was waiting for playoffs.
No,
I
thought it was waiting for the season.
We definitely can't make it playoffs.
Season's here. It should when opening night happens, we should change it back to
Okay,
Gate
okay.
16.
No. How about this? How about we make it Great 16?
Why not just Gate 16?
Because it's going to be a great season.
Oh my god.
Maybe I have one episode where we collab with Clay once again, and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
It's the GLCPC.
No.
GLC. The GLCPC 16?
No, let's not.
No, that's too much.
Yeah, exactly. Anyhow,
I'm just saying that it's the GLCPC effect that's, it's watering down all over me. I've been blessed by the holy waters themselves.
Why not Brock 16?
No,
doesn't rhyme, Chris.
Yeah, it's got to rhyme with 8 or gate and stuff like that.
Well, it can't be Hate 16 because we're no longer hating.
No, we're all about the love.
We'll think of something. By the way, a last minute thing I want to mention. I need to get a new jersey this year, so I want to put it out to Discord and all the great people in Gate 16 or Wait 16 or whatever the hell we're going to call it this season. Send me your suggestions on which jersey and which number I should get. I am taking all suggestions. I am in reasonable expectations. I'm not going to get something that says Adam on the back of my jersey.
You should get something that says Adam on the back of your jersey.
No, I will not.
Get the first half of the jersey is the home jersey, the second half is the away jersey, and then you'll have the Adam in the back where the first two letters are one color.
Okay, now you're just being crazy.
People do it with the Sedines, so hey, what can I say?
Last thing I'll say in terms of last words, shout out to the future Mrs. Lee. For those who don't know, I got engaged about a month ago, and we're officially,
congratulations.
Yeah, I know I am officially off the market. It is a no movement clause for the rest of my life.
So, we still don't know how this all went down. You never actually shared with us. Anna and I sort of, talked a little bit about on the last episode. There was a helicopter behind the two of you. Did you make arrangements to go
Yes, we were on a helicopter. We stopped in the middle of nowhere, Pitt Meadows, and I proposed. Is the long story anyway. Long story short, I should say.
Baller.
Yeah. Use the big podcast dollars that we get around here to fund it.
So it goes in the mail, huh?
Yeah, anyway, that's it for me.
We did get a couple reviews.
Okay, very quickly.
Well, no, it is as long as it takes because we do this for our listeners who took as much time as they needed to do.
You're right.
Thank you. So the first review was from Saskatoon Hockey, who gave us 3 out of 5 stars. Says, good podcast, but sounds quality is not great. And that's true. This is something that we're continually looking to explore to try to resolve. This offseason, we've done a variety of different things, but we are committed to making sure that the audio is much more consistent. To that effect, please look for us to maintain that consistency as this season goes on. The other review we got was from Lisa Martin Images, which gave us 5 out of 5 stars, titled Keeping It Real. Great show with lots of good content. Enjoyed this show for a few years now. The draft review shows are great, and you can learn a lot from the show. Proud Patreon supporter. Someday I hope to buy them a beer at a game. When the NHL comes to Seattle, I hope they will make the trip down here so I can buy them another beer. If you are looking for a show with rose-tinted glasses, this isn't for you. They are keeping real and telling like it is.
Well, that's a great review, and I especially like the part about buying us beer.
Well, see, I read that. I'm like, that's awesome. I want to buy Lisa Martin Images a beer. Like it.
Okay, you buy her a bit, and then she'll buy me one, and let's pull the whole thing off.
Works out well for Anna. But I actually do hope that when the NHL finally gets to Seattle, which is first game in 3 years? 2 years?
2 years, right? 21, isn't it?
21? I don't know. It's so far in advance.
But yeah, we're going to do a
20 Stanley Cups by then.
Road trip, correct?
Yeah, C4 road trip.
Yeah.
We can sit next to the Larscheiders. Speaking of which, I see that the Larscheiders are back big time. Like, that section's sold out, huh?
Yeah, it's sold out within 2 hours, I think. So, it should be loud. It should be fun. We're going to a preseason game and then 8 games throughout the year, so should be a good time.
You'll be wearing your C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast t-shirt, repping the brand, right?
I will at times be doing that. I did wear it out the other day, and then my friend told me I looked like an idiot, except he didn't use the word idiot.
Oh, what's this friend talking smack for? Your friend doesn't seem like a very nice person.
No, he just thought it was tacky to wear your own podcast shirt, but I didn't think so.
I don't like your friend.
No.
Anyway, Adam, final words of wisdom?
No, I'm just happy Boeser's signed. That's all I ever wanted out of this training camp.
And life in general.
Well, there's more I want out of life than just that.
Oh, okay. No, that's all
like
I
a Stanley
wanted.
Cup?
For a future podcast.
Can you imagine if the Vancouver Canucks won a Stanley Cup? Like the pure energy that you'll hear in Adam's voice?
Yeah, it'd be something. That's for sure.
It would be something.
I was talking to someone who listens and they're like, yeah, that Adam guy, he's like, his energy level is like neutral or negative. And I'm like, no, he goes both sides of the spectrum. And he's like, no, he's just like, he sounds like, that guy is just so level-headed, but then when he has energy, it's like the negative kind. So
give me things to be positive about. No, positive. Remember when the Canucks drafted Hughes and that energy? Come on.
Yeah, and also, to be fair, he's teaching the youth of tomorrow, and that's pretty exhausting.
I am a pretty neutral person, that's fair. I don't really have a wide range of emotions. But, I'll get excited when there's something worth getting excited about. So.
He's saving it.
Yeah. And Anna, what final words of wisdom do you have?
Brock is back. Hockey's back, kind of. Let's get a do-over on these preseason games, but...
last I checked, was it the game in Victoria? It was 2-0 for the Flames. 2 shots, 2 goals. DiPietro not looking so good.
No.
Has that changed a whole lot?
No.
He looks so small, by the way, in person, DiPietro.
Oh, but he's
like he wouldn't. I know.
Relative to goaltenders,
small relative to goalies. Like he looks like he's Petey size.
He's built like me, yeah.
And like you compare him to like Markstrom, who's like the big Swedish giant. So
yeah, I did listen to Scotty Rintle the other day saying that one thing that surprised him when he went into hockey was how small hockey players are. Yeah. When they don't wear their gear. They're just not that big in comparison to other athletes.
Markstrom looks big.
Yeah, I mean he's a giant. I'm not. Yeah, he definitely is.
Anyhow, final words for me is yes, it is good to have hockey back on the TV because Baby Force is currently watching the Vancouver Canucks play.
Aw,
nice.
She's gotten into sports now.
Getting her started young.
Like she likes going to Whitecaps matches. She knows football. She will be watching football. I was watching the Seahawks this weekend, and she was actually she was reacting to the plays. Like Russell Wilson gets annihilated, and she's like boom, and I'm like, oh, it's my little girl.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm proud of this stuff.
Yeah.
But on behalf of Matt at @Millie_61, Adam at Adam FOC, Anna at A4Say03, myself, Chris at Lightforce, I'm going to sign off this podcast episode with the normal 2 words. We're out.